Married for 5 years, I finally asked Ethan Carter for a divorce. His hand, which was signing a contract, paused. Then he asked, "Why?" I lowered my eyes. My family went bankrupt. Bankrupt? To him, I no longer had any value. Also, I added, I smelled gardenia perfume on your coat. It was such a strong scent, and he was a known germaphobe who wouldn't let just anyone get close to him. Back then, I had been blinded by love, completely fixated on marrying him. I thought that if we just spent enough time together, feelings would eventually grow. But Ethan Carter himself had once asked me, "Do you really think that just by marrying me, I'll somehow fall in love with you?" Now, I was finally choosing to let go. The news of my family's bankruptcy came while I was organizing Ethan's clothes. My mother's voice trembled on the phone. After choking back sobs, she finally managed to say, "Chloe, our family, we're bankrupt." The coat in my hands suddenly felt impossibly heavy, and it slipped from my grasp. As it fell, it released a pleasant scent of gardenias. But I never wore gardenia perfume. I parted my lips to speak. "Mom, don't worry, I have money. I can sell my designer bags, that will bring in some cash." My mother's choked sobs continued. "It's not enough. Your father owes $70 million in external debts." My head swam. Then we'll use what we have to cover it for now. I had never faced a moment like this in my life. Only after the call ended did I finally break down and cry. A cheating husband and a family drowning in debt. At that moment, I was filled with a sudden, sharp regret. Why had I been such a clueless, superficial heiress with a head full of nothing but romance? Ethan didn't return home until evening. The moment he walked in, he started signing contracts, acting as if I wasn't even there. It wasn't until I stood directly in front of him that he finally looked up. I took a deep breath. "Ethan Carter, let's get a divorce." The pen in Ethan's hand finally stopped moving. He looked at me and scoffed, the same look he always gave me when he thought I was being a fool. Why? My family went bankrupt. Bankrupt. I was useless to him now. And I smelled gardenia perfume on your coat. A scent that strong on a man as fastidious as him could only mean one thing. After I said this, a rare blank expression washed over Ethan's face. I pressed my lips together and handed him the divorce agreement. "You just need to sign it. I had a professional review all the terms. Take a look and see if they meet your satisfaction." Ethan finally moved, taking the papers from my hand. He was handsome, and at 27, his charm hadn't faded. If anything, he had a new, mature allure that made him even more attractive. He glanced at the document for only a few moments before placing it on the table. "Chloe, I think we can face this problem together instead of just going our separate ways at a critical time." I forced a smile. "But Ethan, you don't love me. Why won't you sign?" Being with me now was just a burden. Still, my heart couldn't help but flutter at his words. After all, this was the man I had loved for 10 years. Could it be? But my hope was shattered by his sigh. "I don't want to lie to you," he said softly. "It's just, you look so much like her." "Like whom?" Ethan wouldn't tell me, but the next day my mother called, her voice bubbling with misplaced joy. "Chloe, your father's financial crisis has been resolved. Ethan Carter took care of it." "Do you think he's finally fallen for you? It makes sense. You've been together 7 years. He must have feelings for you by now." My face went pale, and my hand trembled as I held the phone, because at that very moment, I saw him. Ethan was standing outside his company building, dressed in a sharp black suit. Beside him stood a beautiful young woman. She wore a white dress and had a smile so bright it seemed to radiate sunshine. "Ethan," she said, her voice bright and clear, "is Buddy still around?" A smile I had never seen before spread across Ethan's face. "He is." I knew Buddy. He was a small mutt I used to love playing with. But whenever Ethan saw us, he would sternly pull the dog away. I once asked him, my voice full of hurt, "Ethan, I know you don't like me, but can't I even play with your dog?" He had frowned, his face a mask of impatience. "No." "Why not?" I had pressed, asking over and over until he finally answered. "Because he was a gift from someone very important to me." Buddy was incredibly well cared for. Even when Ethan was at his poorest, he made sure that dog had the best food. I hung up on my mother and opened my phone's camera. I held it up, carefully comparing my reflection to the woman beside Ethan. We looked shockingly similar. The same eyes, the same lips, but her face had an air of innocence and intelligence that mine lacked. The woman bounced on her toes and then, ever so carefully, leaned in and kissed Ethan on the lips. His face slowly turned red, like a schoolboy experiencing his first crush. My one-track mind finally connected the dots. I was just a replacement. It all made sense now. The day I offered him money to marry me, he had been disgusted and said cruel things, yet he had still agreed. At the time, another, wealthier woman had offered him even more, but he had refused her. I had laughed then. "Don't regret this, Ethan. This is all the money I have. She has much more." He had frowned, saying, "I'm not for sale." He had stared at my face so intently that day. I thought it was because I was prettier than the other woman. It turned out it was only because I looked just like his unforgettable first love, his white moonlight. I don't know how I made it home. I felt like a ghost. I still had to pay Ethan back. He had cleared my father's debts, and I would repay every penny. In my 25 years, I had never once worried about money, but now it was all I could think about. After much thought, I started selling everything of value. My designer bags, my jewelry, everything. I managed to gather just over $1 million. I transferred it all to a single bank card and then began packing away everything that was mine in the house. I knew I couldn't stay here. My mother always said that while I wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed, I did have one saving grace. I knew when to get out of the way. What if Ethan wanted to bring her back to this house? I would, of course, make way for them. But just as I finished packing and headed for the door, I ran right into him. And he wasn't alone. The woman who had kissed him was with him. She offered a bright smile. "Hello, I'm Arya Scott." Arya Scott. The name clicked. I had heard it before, written on the sky lantern Ethan and I had released years ago. I had been confused then, staring at the carefully written words. "May Arya Scott always be happy." Who is Arya Scott? That day, under a sky filled with lanterns, Ethan's voice had been heavy with a bitter sadness. "She's a very important person in my life." I didn't press him. The past was the past, and he was with me now. Later that night, after the lantern drifted away, he had leaned in and kissed me. And now, here I was, standing like a pathetic clown, forcing an awkward smile. I'm Chloe Miller. Ethan's eyes fell on my packed suitcase and he frowned. "It's so late. Where are you going?" I blinked hard, fighting back tears, but I had always been a crier and I couldn't stop them from welling up. "I'm going to a hotel." How humiliating, to cry in front of my cheating husband and his mistress. Ethan grabbed the handle of my suitcase. "Why would you go to a hotel?" I wiped my tears away. "You cheated. I'm making room for you two." His expression froze. He turned to Arya and said, "I'm sorry, I need to speak with her alone for a moment." Once we were in the room, Ethan's face grew cold. "She already has a child. There's nothing between us anymore." His expression turned somber. There wasn't in the past and there won't be in the future. I raised my hand and slapped him hard across the face. "Get out!" I screamed. "You're disgusting. I can't believe I actually loved you for 5 years." That night, I moved into a hotel. I didn't look back, no matter what Ethan said. Finally, his voice turned icy. "Fine, go, but don't come crying to me when you want my attention." I flinched. He had a cold nature, and in the past, whenever he was angry, I was always the one to grovel and apologize. Once, I spent an entire day out with friends and didn't come home, and he threw a massive tantrum, which for him meant giving me the silent treatment. It took me a week of constant coaxing before he finally softened. I never dared to stay out all day again after that. People in our social circle used to joke, "Most men are henpecked, but you seem to be the one who's husband-pecked." I would just shrug and offer a helpless smile. The fact that he gets possessive means he loves me. Now I scoffed at the memory. "Don't worry," I told him, "I won't be looking for you." I held out the bank card. "I will pay you back, $70 million. This card has $1,700,000 on it right now." For the first time, Ethan's face turned ashen. "You want to talk about money with me?" I nodded. "Yes. If not now, when?" "And by the way," I added, looking him straight in the eye, "we are getting that divorce certificate in a few days. I'm dead serious." The moment the words left my mouth, Ethan's expression shattered. He stood frozen, his breathing ragged. "Divorce?" I didn't spare him another glance. I just walked away. The next few days in the hotel were a blur. The memories of our life together washed over me like a relentless tide. When I first mentioned divorce, it was in a fit of anger. But now, the reality of it settled in, and my heart ached with a deep, throbbing pain. I had loved him for so long. The word divorce alone felt like a weight in my chest. But life had to go on. I sent out several resumes and, to my surprise, landed an internship at a company. A few days later, while working a part-time job at a jewelry store to make ends meet, I ran into him again. He was with Arya Scott. They stood close, looking for all the world like the perfect, beautiful couple. Ethan saw me, and one of his friends called out, "Hey, Chloe, fancy seeing you here." Arya offered a gentle, knowing smile. "It's Chloe, right? I remember seeing you at your wedding 5 years ago. You didn't see me, but I remembered you." So, she had been there, a shadow in my life even back then. This time, Ethan's reaction was different. His face was a cold mask as he snapped at the friend who had greeted me. "Don't call her that." He had a fragile pride, and my words from the other day had clearly wounded him. Just then, my manager bustled over. "Chloe, are the customers looking at rings? Don't you have any sense? Go help them." I bit my lip and forced the question out. "Would you like to try on some rings?" Ethan had always been measured in his anger, never crossing certain lines, but this time was different. "In that case, Miss Miller," he said, his voice dripping with ice, "please help Arya try on some rings. Price is no object." A look of pure delight spread across Arya's face. I nodded numbly and led her to the display cases. She took her time, deliberately making me wait, before finally selecting a matching set of couples rings. She slipped the woman's ring onto her finger and shot me a triumphant smile. "It suits me perfectly, don't you think?" She turned to Ethan. "Ethan, you should try yours on too. It would look great on you." My stomach churned as I placed the ring on his finger. Disgusting. I looked up, my voice flat. "The total is $87,000. Will that be card or another payment method?" After Ethan paid, I looked directly at him. "By the way, Ethan," I pulled the wedding ring from my own finger. "You can have this back." The color drained from his face. Even his boisterous friends fell silent. Finally, Ethan spoke, his voice strained. "I don't take back gifts." I nodded, then turned and threw the ring into a nearby trash can. "Have a nice day." His expression hardened. "Let's go," he snapped at his friends. The moment they were out the door, I rushed to the restroom and was sick. When there was nothing left to throw up, I looked at my reflection in the mirror. I was a wreck. I wanted to cry, but there were no tears left. Ethan Carter wasn't worth a single one. When I came out, my manager patted my shoulder. "That was a huge sale. But are you all right, Chloe? You look terribly pale." I rubbed my eyes and forced another smile. "I'm fine." The past 5 years of my life had officially become a joke today, the day Ethan brought Arya to buy rings. I threw out everything that reminded me of Ethan. With each item I discarded, it felt like I was purging a memory. After that day at the jewelry store, he called me. He sounded drunk, and his voice was thick with what might have been regret. "Chloe," he slurred, "I only bought Arya those rings to make you angry. You pushed me too far, and I wanted to teach you a lesson. I never meant to buy them for her, but you kept provoking me." He rambled on, his words laced with the smell of alcohol through the phone. "I just drank a bottle of liquor, and now my stomach hurts. I saw the medicine you always leave out for me, and it made me think of you." Ethan had chronic stomach issues, but always refused to take his medication. So I had bought bottles of it and placed them in every corner of our living room, just to make sure he could always find it. I remember him laughing at me when I first did it. "Can you stop acting like such a nagging old woman?" he'd said. And now he was using that very medicine as an excuse to call me. I closed my eyes. Ethan, you're only making me feel more disgusting. I hung up. After the last postcard I had from him was reduced to ashes, I took a deep breath. It's time to move on, I whispered to myself. I had always been a one-man woman, stubbornly loyal to a fault. But a heart, once broken, learns to feel pain. And I refuse to feel that pain for Ethan Carter anymore. When I came out, my manager patted my shoulder. That was a huge sale. But are you all right, Chloe? You look terribly pale. I rubbed my eyes and forced another smile. I'm fine. The past 5 years of my life had officially become a joke today, the day Ethan brought Arya to buy rings. I threw out everything that reminded me of Ethan. With each item I discarded, it felt like I was purging a memory. After that day at the jewelry store, he called me. He sounded drunk, and his voice was thick with what might have been regret. Chloe, he slurred, I only bought Arya those rings to make you angry. You pushed me too far, and I wanted to teach you a lesson. I never meant to buy them for her, but you kept provoking me. He rambled on, his words laced with the smell of alcohol through the phone. I just drank a bottle of liquor, and now my stomach hurts. I saw the medicine you always leave out for me, and it made me think of you. Ethan had chronic stomach issues, but always refused to take his medication. So I had bought bottles of it and placed them in every corner of our living room, just to make sure he could always find it. I remember him laughing at me when I first did it. Can you stop acting like such a nagging old woman? He'd said. And now he was using that very medicine as an excuse to call me. I closed my eyes. Ethan, you're only making me feel more disgusting. I hung up. After the last postcard I had from him was reduced to ashes, I took a deep breath. It's time to move on, I whispered to myself. I had always been a one-man woman, stubbornly loyal to a fault. But a heart, once broken, learns to feel pain. And I refuse to feel that pain for Ethan Carter anymore. That Sunday, I decided to take action. I called him. Let's go get the divorce papers signed today. The line was silent. For a moment, I thought the call had dropped. Then his voice came through, muffled and low. I'm not signing any divorce papers. Chloe, you're just angry right now. I'll wait for you to cool down. I let out a laugh that was more bitter than amused. Get lost. You make me sick. There are plenty of ways to get a divorce, Ethan. I have no problem seeing you in court. After I said that, the line went dead. He had hung up on me. In the weeks that followed, I paid him no mind. As far as I was concerned, we were already over. I wasn't desperate enough to go crawling back to him. One day, my best friend, Olivia Jones, invited me to a gala. I realized it had been ages since I'd attended one with her, and since it was my day off, I agreed. At the event, I saw many familiar faces. The news about Ethan and Arya had spread like wildfire through our circle, and the pitying glances thrown my way were almost unbearable. What's with all these looks? I muttered to Olivia, downing a glass of champagne. Olivia wrapped an arm around me. Chloe, everyone knew how hard you chased after him. To finally marry him, only for him to cheat? Of course they're going to feel sorry for you. I looked down, a bitter smile on my lips. It was true. My pursuit of him had been relentless and public. I taught myself to cook because he complained my food was terrible. I had chased him with a fierce, reckless passion, and now all I got in return were looks of pity. Suddenly, Olivia froze. Chloe, Ethan's here. I never would have expected him to show up at an event like this. He always hated them. Whenever I used to attend, he would frown and ask, why do you need to go to these things all the time? You always dress so provocatively, and it makes me feel insecure. Back then, to soothe his insecurity, I had all but stopped going out with Olivia. Looking back now, I wondered how much of what he said was truth and how much was a lie. He was wearing a white suit, and a crowd immediately formed around him. Look at him, putting on a show, Olivia sneered. Ethan ignored everyone else and walked straight to me. If you've calmed down, he said, his voice low, come home with me. This was the first time he had ever made a move to reconcile. It had always been me. What makes you think I'm just angry? I stared him down. Ethan, cheating is a fundamental betrayal. It's not a one-time mistake, it's a pattern. There is no way I am going back with you. The air grew thick with tension. We were surrounded by people, and Ethan was a man who cared deeply about his image. Finally, he dropped his hand from my arm. He shot me a look of pure frustration, then turned and walked away. A buzz immediately started around us. Wait, did Ethan seriously come to this party just to find Chloe? I always thought Chloe's chase was a lost cause, but maybe it wasn't so useless after all. Olivia scoffed. They're just a bunch of gossips, Chloe. Don't listen to them. Of course I wouldn't. Halfway through the night, a new commotion erupted at the entrance. A wave of guests surged toward the door. Olivia nudged me, whispering, Chloe, do you know why all the biggest names in the industry are here tonight? I set down my glass. My interest piqued. As a man stepped through the doorway, Olivia's whisper reached my ears. Because the host of this party is the most powerful tycoon in our circle, Leo Scott. As she said his name, my eyes met his across the room. My throat went dry. It was him. Leo Scott saw me at the same moment, and his deep, intense eyes locked onto mine. That gaze compared to 5 years ago was now filled with a powerful, predatory confidence and something else. Something I could barely comprehend. It felt like years of unspoken longing. He closed the distance between us in a few long strides. His voice was a low, melodic hum like a cello. Long time no see. Olivia nearly fainted. What? Chloe, you know Leo Scott? How could I explain it? Leo and I were childhood friends. Our families were so close that we had been unofficially engaged since we were kids. He had always been there for me, a protective older brother figure. But then in college, I met Ethan. I found myself drawn to Ethan's cool, aloof demeanor more than Leo's steady presence. I threw tantrums and pleaded until our families finally called off the engagement. Everyone told me I was making a mistake, but Leo, he didn't argue. He simply went with me to face our families. Chloe, he had said, your happiness is what matters most. It's your right to love who you want. I can't keep you tied to me. With his help, the engagement was broken. It was difficult, but we did it. As we walked away that day, his voice was a raw plea. Chloe, if you're ever unhappy, will you please think of me? I'll always be waiting for you. I had frowned then. Leo, I love Ethan. You should find someone else. After that, I heard he went abroad to build his career. He wasn't there on my wedding day. He had been gone for 5 years. And now, he was back. I stood up. Long time no see. Leo was more mature now, more polished. His eyes, which seemed to hold the depth of a spring lake, were even more striking than I remembered. I once teased him. Leo, has anyone ever told you that you have beautiful eyes? He had just shaken his head. No. Later, when I asked our mutual friends, they were confused. Gentle like water? You must mean when he looks at you. When he looks at anyone else, his eyes are like ice. Snapping back to the present, I asked, are you back because your business overseas is established now? He looked at me, his gaze holding a new possessive intensity I'd never seen before. Yes and no. I blinked. What do you mean? Chloe, he said, his voice dropping, what if I told you I came back to steal you away? His words were so blunt, they left me completely speechless. After we left the party, the way people looked at me had completely changed. After all, Leo Scott was a star that shone even brighter than Ethan Carter. So Chloe Miller had Leo Scott in her corner all along? Didn't they have a childhood engagement that was called off? Leo ignored the whispers and looked at me. I'll drive you. I was about to refuse, but Olivia jumped in. That's wonderful. Leo, please take good care of our Chloe. Leo smiled. Then please, get in the car, Chloe. I had no choice. As he leaned over to fasten my seatbelt, he was so close I could smell the clean, crisp scent of pine on his clothes. Our breaths mingled in the small space. I turned my head slightly to create some distance, but in a stroke of awkward timing, my lips brushed against his forehead. My eyes widened in shock as I heard his low, muffled laugh. Chloe, I was just trying to fasten your seatbelt. My face flushed crimson. He was far more assertive than the boy I remembered from 5 years ago. He started the car, the engine humming to life. Suddenly, my phone buzzed. It was Ethan. I answered, and his ragged, angry breaths filled the line. "Chloe, who are you with right now?" He demanded, his voice trembling with rage. I frowned. "Who I'm with is none of your business." "I saw you," he hissed. "I was right by the car when you two kissed." I glanced out the window and, sure enough, there he was, standing not far from Leo's car, a stark figure in his white suit. I hung up on him. Inside the car, Leo's voice was light and cheerful. "Oh, dear, I didn't realize he saw that. I hope he won't be upset with me." I rubbed my temples. He has no right to be. When we arrived at my apartment, Leo unbuckled my seatbelt and then looked at me, his gaze direct and unwavering. "See you tomorrow." I nodded, but I wasn't prepared for what I found waiting for me at my door. It was Ethan. He stood there in the same white suit, his eyes shot with blood. "Chloe, what is the meaning of this?" This was a side of him I had never seen. He had always claimed nothing in the world was worth losing his composure over, but now his eyes were red-rimmed and frantic. "Chloe, give me an explanation." My face remained impassive. "Ethan, we are over. Whatever I do now has nothing to do with you." I paused. "Actually, if there's one thing that connects us, it's money. I remembered something yesterday. That villa my father bought for us, its market value must be close to 70 million now, right? So if you sell it, you won't be at a loss." The moment the words left my mouth, he roared, "I'm not selling it!" He stared at me, his eyes wild. "Chloe, we made so many good memories in that villa. We lived there together for 3 years. 3 years. We had planted flowers together, fed the goldfish in the pond. He had kissed me there and promised we would be together forever. It was true, that house held countless memories. But—" I lowered my gaze, a sarcastic smile playing on my lips. "Mr. Carter, don't be like this. Shouldn't you be getting home? Your white moonlight is probably waiting for you." For the first time, a look of genuine regret crossed his face. "Chloe, there is nothing between her and me. I can forget what happened tonight if you'll just come back with me." He was truly pathetic. When I was devoted to him, he treated me like a substitute. Now that I wanted to leave, he was full of regret. Get lost. He was still at my door the next morning. It looked like he had been there all night. When he saw me, he tried to stand up but stumbled, collapsing back to the ground. "Chloe." His voice was a weak plea, but I was unmoved. "Please move, I need to get to work." I added coldly, "If you're still here when I get back, I'm calling security." I didn't spare his heartbroken expression as I walked away. By the time I finished work, it was evening. To my surprise, Leo was waiting for me outside the office building. He smiled and pressed a bouquet of fragrant lilies into my arms. "Olivia told me you worked here." In the car, the memory of our accidental kiss made my cheeks burn. When we got back to my apartment, Ethan was still there, stubbornly sitting on the floor. The smile on my face from Leo's gesture vanished the moment I saw him. A bitter smile twisted Ethan's lips. "So, he drove you home?" I ignored him and strode past, pulling out my phone. The sight of me dialing was the last straw. His composure finally broke. "Chloe, you were never like this before," he said, his voice cracking as tears streamed down his face. It was the first time I had ever seen him cry. He looked like a lost child, all his pride stripped away. "Chloe, are you really going to abandon me?" I ignored him. In my eyes, he was acting like a lunatic. Ethan was eventually dragged away by security. The great, proud man looked utterly defeated, his face a mask of desolation. A month passed. Leo made a habit of picking me up from work, and I found my heart slowly making space for him. Ethan, thankfully, stayed out of my life, and the quiet was a relief. Then, one night, while Leo and I were making hot pot at my place, I got a call from one of Ethan's friends. "Chloe," he said, his voice hushed. "Did you and Ethan have a fight? He's a complete mess over here, crying his eyes out." He continued, "When I got to his house, he was just lying on the floor, reeking of alcohol. He saw me, just stared for a second, and then grabbed onto me and started sobbing. He was calling out your name. His hand was bleeding, and he was clutching some kind of diary. I asked to see it, but he wouldn't let go. A diary? I remembered it. I had filled a thick journal with 5 years of our lives. It was full of little things like what foods he liked and disliked. I had watched him so closely, noting which dish he took a second helping of, which one made him frown. The pages were filled with our sweet moments, illustrated with little doodles. I remember him seeing it once and scoffing. How childish. Back when I loved him, I could endure his dismissiveness. But at some point, the sweet moments became fewer and farther between, until there was nothing left to write about. His friend's voice pulled me back. So, Chloe, are you going to come see him? Just then, Leo's voice cut through the air, clear and warm. Chloe, do you want some more beef? His voice was so close, so intimate. A moment later, I heard the sound of a bottle shattering on the other end of the phone. Ethan's voice, raw with fury, roared. He's there with you? It's 11 o'clock at night and you're still together. Chloe, don't you dare tell me you're living together. Leo raised an eyebrow at me, a playful glint in his eye. Chloe, he murmured, his voice a teasing, provocative whisper, loud enough for the phone to pick up. He sounds very angry. I heard another crash through the phone as Ethan screamed, Don't you touch her! I sighed. Ethan, I don't want to receive any more calls from you unless you're ready to sign the divorce papers. And if you won't, I have no problem filing the suit myself. After hanging up, I looked at Leo. He held out a slice of beef with an innocent expression. More? I nodded. Yes. By the time we finished dinner, it was past midnight. We talked for hours about the old days. He stretched out on my sofa. It was large enough to comfortably fit a man of his size. As I turned off the lights, I leaned over him. Good night. His hand shot out and grabbed my wrist. His eyes were shining in the dim light. Chloe, you haven't said no to me yet. Does that mean I still have a chance? His gaze was like a deep, calm pool of water. It was the same look he had given me for years, the look he had while he silently walked alongside me through my life. I nodded. Yes. My future would not have Ethan's shadow in it. Leo couldn't hold back. He pulled me into his arms, his heart hammering against his chest. I felt something cool and wet on my neck and realized with the start that he was crying. Leo, don't cry, I whispered. He just buried his face in my shoulder. After a long moment, his muffled voice came out, thick with emotion. I'm not letting go this time. His voice was laced with a fierce possessiveness. You're the one giving me this chance. Don't think for a second I'll let you go again. I let you go once 5 years ago and you weren't happy. I've regretted every single day. I don't know who kissed whom first, but in the end, Leo's tears stopped. The next morning, Ethan was at my door again. It had only been a month, but he looked gaunt and exhausted. The polished man was gone, replaced by someone who reeked of stale alcohol. He sat slumped against the wall, surrounded by empty bottles. When he saw me, a look of utter despair crossed his face. Those shoes by the door? They're Leo's, aren't they? He slept here last night? I didn't have to answer. Leo emerged from the apartment behind me, looking refreshed and content. He saw me and smiled warmly. Chloe, I'm going to go get you some kanji. I remember you always loved the kind from Zhang's. Then, as if just noticing, he looked down at Ethan on the floor. Well, if it isn't Mr. Carter, don't tell me you've been sitting out here all night? Ethan was ashen-faced, his eyes fixed on the ground. The silence was so thick, you could hear a pin drop. Finally, he looked up, his eyes swimming with tears. Chloe, you used to love me so much. How could you just let go? How am I supposed to live? Tears streamed down his cheeks as he spoke. Chloe, how could you just give up on me like this? I took a deep, steadying breath. Ethan, don't you dare pretend to be the victim. You were the one who cheated. It's useless to come to me now, and get the divorce papers signed in the next few days, or I'll see you in court. A few days later,
Ethan finally met me to sign the divorce papers. As we walked out of the government building, it was like all the strength drained out of him and he collapsed onto the steps. I remembered the day we got our marriage certificate. I had been beaming. "We're going to be together forever," I had declared. He had responded coolly, "Who knows what the future holds? Very few people stay together for a lifetime." I had pouted, calling him a spoilsport. But when we took the photo for the certificate, a small, fleeting smile had touched his lips, and the camera had captured it. Now, I held our divorce certificate in my hand. Beside me, Leo was waiting patiently. He saw the document, and a slow smile spread across his face. "Let's go." From behind us, Ethan's broken voice called out, "Chloe?" I turned to see his red-rimmed eyes. Will you ever think of me?" I turned back to Leo. "No," I said, my voice firm. "A person like you isn't worth remembering. It's too disgusting." Beside me, I heard Leo mutter, "Ethan is so shameless, saying something so pathetic." He then turned to me with a smile. "Not like me, Chloe." I couldn't help but laugh and play along. "You're the best." A year later, Leo and I were married. He gave me the most magnificent wedding, filled with my favorite flowers, fragrant lilies. My best friend, Olivia, did my makeup, chattering excitedly, "I expect a hefty bridesmaid fee for this." I laughed. "You can bill Leo for it." Many people from our circle came to the wedding. But then I saw him. Ethan was an uninvited guest. Leo's face darkened the moment he spotted him. What is he doing here? My stomach clenched. My ex-husband at my wedding. It was nauseating. I walked over to him. "If I'm not mistaken, Mr. Carter was not on the guest list." My tone was sharp. A look of deep disappointment crossed his face. "Can't I just come to see you?" I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. "No," I said, enunciating each word, "because your presence makes me feel sick." Leo had security escort Ethan out. As he was led away, Ethan's face was a ghostly white, as if his soul had been ripped out. Leo sneered, "What's with the dramatic act? Hasn't he been with Arya Scott for the past year?" It was true. Ethan and Arya were together. The rumor was that Arya had used some underhanded tactics to make it happen. She had gone public online, detailing how wonderful Ethan had supposedly been to her and how much he'd loved her, only to be cast aside because she had a child. The story went viral, but netizens quickly uncovered her role as the other woman. Under intense public pressure, Ethan had married her, but he never gave her a wedding. The whole sordid affair became a laughingstock in our circle. No one respected either of them. Ethan's business had suffered too. Between his constant drinking and the bad press, his company's stock had plummeted. But none of that was my problem anymore. I took Leo's hand. It was warm and steady. "Leo, from now on, we'll be together forever." He looked down at me, his eyes full of the same unwavering devotion they had always held. "Of course." After Chloe's wedding, Ethan started to drink more heavily than ever before. His friends warned him to slow down, that he was destroying his health, but he couldn't stop. If he wasn't drunk, the emptiness in his heart was unbearable. And then there was the matter of going home to a face that looked so much like Chloe's, but was fundamentally wrong. Arya lacked Chloe's tender, sometimes naive affection. Arya would never brew him hangover soup. She would never gently plead him to drink less. Chloe would have. Each comparison was a fresh wave of longing for Chloe. The truth was, he'd met Chloe in a bar. She was a pampered heiress, dressed in designer clothes, laughing without a care in the world. She was beautiful, and in the haze of brandy that night, she was utterly captivating. He knew of her reputation, an uneducated, good-for-nothing socialite, a straw bag. But as he looked closer, He saw the striking resemblance to his white moonlight, the one he could never have. And in that moment, his heart had lurched. He was a smart, practical man. His first love was married and living in another country. She was lost to him forever. So that night, he had deliberately engineered a meeting. She was just as foolish as he had expected, immediately drawn to his looks. Goaded on by her friends, she had approached him, blushing. "Hi, I'm Chloe. Can I get your number?" Amidst the laughter of his friends, he had coolly replied, "I don't just give my number to anyone." Everything she did after that fell perfectly into his plan. Her clumsy attempts to win him over, her endearing earnestness. She was so wonderfully, painfully foolish. He remembered watching her try to bake him a birthday cake. She's so stupid, he had thought. But he still said, "Here, let me help you." His attempt was even worse than hers. For some reason, baking that cake turned into a strange, unspoken competition. In the end, he produced a perfectly decorated cake. He looked from his creation to hers, a lopsided, misshapen thing that looked like something a witch would bake in a fairy tale. But Chloe's eyes had lit up. "Wow, Ethan, you're amazing." At that moment, his heart felt like it had been squeezed, a strange, aching something he didn't recognize. No one had ever looked at him with such pure admiration. And in that instant, as he looked at her, his heart had truly beaten for Chloe. He just didn't know it then. He had loved Arya, or the idea of her. Even his relationship with Chloe began because of the resemblance. When Arya returned, divorced and available, he didn't actually want to marry her. The unattainable white moonlight of his youth was important, but somehow she couldn't compare to the woman waiting for him at home. He admitted to himself that he'd been tempted when Arya came back. He let her get close, but the closer they got, the more he realized that somewhere along the line, the woman he truly loved had become Chloe. That's why he had panicked when she first asked for a divorce. But he couldn't bring himself to turn Arya away either. The untouchable white moonlight had suddenly come down to earth and was suddenly within his reach. He wanted both. He wanted the idealized memory and the comfortable reality. He was so pragmatic, so greedy, and that greed had led to this irreversible, devastating end.